This is Val's K-pop spot now. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. This is Rara's K-pop spot. 안녕하세요 친구들. 내 채널에 다시 오신 것을 환영합니다. 이곳은 라라의 K-pop spot. Moving into my learning highlight for today, I actually didn't prep one. Since I had nothing prepared, we're just gonna go with one sentence that I can spotlight today. I can teach you one sentence of Korean today. This was one of the very first sentences that I learned to speak in Korean because I started learning Korean on my own just by downloading Duolingo. And this was, no kidding, one of the very first sentences that Duolingo ever taught me. Today's learning highlight will be 저는 나쁜 남자가 좋습니다. Which means I like bad boys. So, 저는 나쁜 남자가 좋습니다. I like bad boys. Now you can say that you like bad boys. Thank you, Duolingo, for teaching us what really matters. 저는 나쁜 남자가 좋습니다. Okay, now into the main content for today's video, and it is one I am super excited for because today we're talking about books. And I mentioned in my intro video, if you've seen that I definitely planned to talk about books a lot on this channel because reading is my favorite hobby and has been since I was a very small child. And I managed to wait until my third ever video on Rara's K-pop spot to start talking about books, which I think was showing a lot of restraint on my part. So I have a big smile because I just get to talk about books for the next few minutes, and I could not be happier. Today we will just be talking about books that I have read and enjoyed by Korean voices. We'll be talking about books that are on my to be read list or my TBR by Korean authors. We will talk about upcoming releases that I'm excited for. So let's get into it. Today we will be talking about this very large stack of books that I have with me. Can I get them all in the frame without dropping them all over myself? Maybe. Hopefully. Ooh, okay, so we'll be talking about all of these today. So these are ones that I own, but I have not had the chance to read yet. All of the rest of them are books that I have read. So I've read all of these, and I had to get some of them from the library because I checked them out from the library when I read them the first time. So this is my friendly reminder that libraries are the greatest things that humans have possibly ever invented, and you should definitely utilize your local library if you have access to one. So when I got into K-pop last year and I wanted to start learning more about Korean culture, the first thing that I did was look up Korean authors in the genres that I normally read the most of, and then picked books that I thought sounded interesting. And from there, I just started reading as much as I could and picking up pieces of culture as I went along. And the genres that I read the most from are fantasy, romance, and contemporary. And I read both young adult and new adult, or adult, I guess. So I have a mix of kind of all of those things here with me today. Okay, and now all of my good light is gone because it has gotten super dark and super ominous here, which actually is like my favorite weather to read in. So even though the lighting has changed and it's kind of crappy now, that's okay because this is perfect book weather. First, I will be going through the books that I've read. So we'll start there. I think I'm realizing right now that actually like 99% of the books I have with me that I've read are all young adult, but they span various genres, so I've got that going for them at least. I think we will start with the very first book that I read last year after getting into K-pop. This is young adult contemporary, and it is, I still think about this book constantly. This is I Guess I Live Here Now by Claire An. It was just such a perfect, sweet intro into Korean literature. I Guess I Live Here Now follows the story of Melody Lee, and she is a high school junior, and the summer before her senior year of high school starts, her parents move her to Seoul. So she grew up in New York City. She and her mother lived there, and her father always lived and worked in Seoul. So right before her senior year of high school starts, they move her back to Seoul, and she's just dropped into this culture that is hers, but that she's never fully experienced before. And it was just, oh my gosh, it was just such a perfect YA contemporary book. I cannot speak highly enough of it. This book specifically had such great, like, the setting was phenomenal. The setting of South Korea was so well done in this book. And the way that food was described in this book, the Korean cuisine, and also the family dynamics were very complex in this book, which I really appreciated for a young adult work. Honestly, I got a lot of ideas about places that I want to visit and things that I want to do when I visit South Korea from reading this book. So if you're looking to read a book that's set in South Korea, this is such a good one. I cannot recommend it enough. Okay, we've got a ring light, people. Other things that I loved about this are that the cast of side characters was amazing. I also really loved the inclusion of Korean traditions. I learned a lot about Chuseok from reading this. I also learned a lot about historical Korean architecture. So the hanoks play a very important role in this book. Next, I think we'll talk about the one dystopian book that I have with me today. And dystopian is actually not a genre that I read much of anymore, but it was one of my favorite genres back in like 2012-ish, I would say. But the dystopian book that I have with me today is Snowglobe by Soyoung Park. And this book was really cool because this is actually a translated work. So this, I think, was originally published in South Korea earlier this year, but it only just came out in America recently, over the last few months, because we had to wait for a translated copy. So you can even see at the top, it has the title in Hangul, so it says Snowglobe. So Snowglobe. I didn't dislike this one, but I think I wound up only giving it 3 stars out of 5 because it just had a lot going on, and I think that the execution missed the mark a little bit. It takes place far into the future where an ice age has completely taken over the world, except for the glass-domed city of Snowglobe, which is the last place on Earth where you can have warmth. And the city is protected inside this glass dome, and all of the warmth and the heat and the electricity and whatnot that's powered in the city is powered by the people of the outer world. And the only thing that's keeping the people of the outer world working to power the heat and the warmth of Snowglobe is that everyone's lives in Snowglobe are broadcasted to the people of the outer world. Everything. And if you've seen the Truman Show, it is very Truman Show vibes, the way that the people inside of Snowglobe have to live. Things get very weird when our main character, John Chobam, she is actually invited to live in Snowglobe after the main character of her favorite TV show, Go Hari, passes away. And Chobam actually has an uncanny likeness to Hari, so the producers of the TV show, which is called Go Around, they find Chobam and they're like, we don't want the world to know that Harry has passed away, stand in for her. And Chobam just agrees, and so then it takes place inside Snowglobe with Chobam posing as Harry on this TV show, and it was kind of weird. It had a lot going on, especially towards the end. The ending was very fast-paced and there was so much going on, and one of my biggest critiques about this book was that it was a dystopian society, but the main characters didn't do anything to try to dismantle the dystopian society in which they lived, which I think is a really important part of dystopian literature. So that would be my one problem that I had. It is a duology. There is a second book coming out in the spring of next year. So I'm going to read the second book in the hopes that it answers some of the questions that were left from this one. I didn't necessarily learn anything about Korean culture from this book, but it was really cool to be able to read a translated Korean work. Next up in my one-off genre kind of vibe we're going with right now is the one book that I've read that is considered nonfiction, and it is actually a memoir. And I think it's quite popular. I'm sure if you're familiar with Korean literature, you have probably heard of this. But It is the translated work I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. This is Baek Sehee's memoir, and it is actually the transcription of her therapy appointments that she went to. And normally I finish a book and I know how many stars I want to give it in my mind, but this one actually grew on me the longer time went by after I finished it. This one is obviously very heavy on mental health, but it's very reflective and very inspiring. What I wrote in my review for this when I finished reading it still stands, and pretty much all that I said was that I'll never be able to fully put into words how this book made me feel, but it was very impactful for me. And it's just written as a series of mini essays, so the content is very digestible and it's very easy to synthesize all of the information that is presented in the book, and it had like a very profound impact on me. So the translated version of the second book, which is a continuation of the transcriptions of her therapy appointments, actually comes out in America next month, I think on August the 6th. So I'm very excited for that to come out because I am eager to read more and continue to reflect on my own mental health as kind of like bibliotherapy. So I do recommend this one. I will say it is a heavier read, so just check in with yourself before you decide you want to read this one, but it was very good. Okay, I have one more book to talk about that I think is the last one that is the only one of its genre for this video, but this is actually technically not by a Korean author. The author of this book is from Taiwan, but it is a book that focuses on a K-pop girl group. So I wanted to include it here also because it was one of my top reads from last year. It was so good. And that is Gorgeous Gruesome Faces by Linda Cheng. And this book, I've put it in a category by itself because it is, I guess I would consider it probably like YA horror slash thriller. It was a phenomenal book. Normally I am not very into horror thriller, but this had me hooked from the prologue. From the very first page, I was stuck. I said, okay, well, I guess I have to just read this all in one sitting now because what? This sapphic YA supernatural story centers on two members of a failed girl group trio who are attending a new K-pop trainee workshop in Atlanta. This story follows the main character, Sunny Lee, who is working to confront her ex-best friend and groupmate Candy Sai at this K-pop trainee workshop because she wants to question her about her possible involvement in the death of the third member of their failed trio, Mina Park, after she jumped to her death 2 years ago. The story is told back and forth in time between the K-pop workshop in Atlanta in the present and the history of Sweet Cadence's debut in the past. And the way that the author drops details in the flashbacks in the past and the way that you're waiting to see how they're going to connect to what's happening in the present was so genius, so expertly placed, keeps you turning the page because you have to figure out what's going to happen next. When I tell you that this is one of the creepiest books I have ever read, I am not kidding. The tale of the celestial maiden in this story added such a melancholic and terrifying depth to everything. My skin was crawling, I had goosebumps. This was simply like a chilling and thrilling, mysterious kind of gothic horror K-pop girl group masterpiece? Do those words all even make sense together? I don't even know. I am extremely excited for the sequel to come out in November of next year. I believe November 4th maybe of 2025 is when the sequel, Beautiful Brutal Bodies, comes out, and I am counting down the days, honestly. Okay, and now we will move into the last genre of books that I've read by Korean authors, which is going to be YA romance, YA rom-coms. So I think that these would all fall into that category. starting with the ones that I read the longest ago, and actually I read these in 2018, so 6 years ago now, I guess. But I think most people have heard of this author at this point because many of her books have been turned into film and TV shows. So we've got the one and only Jennyhan and her series To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which follows Lara Jean Songkavi. And if you've seen the movie, if you're familiar with the books, Lara Jean writes letters when she has a crush so intense that she doesn't know what to do about it, but she doesn't ever send them until one day they do get sent out to all of the boys that she's loved before. And then her whole life is turned upside down when these boys get the letters that she wrote for them but never intended for them to read. So this series is so cute, and I remember I enjoyed them when I read them. Like I said, it's been 6 years now since I read them, so I'm a little fuzzy on all of the details, but I really do remember enjoying them. Next up we have The Jasmine Project by Meredith Ireland. This is also one that I read a while ago. It's been a little over 2 years now since I read this one, but it is laugh out loud funny. And this follows the story of Jasmine Yap, who after graduating high school is getting ready to start a nursing program at a community college and move in with her longtime boyfriend Paul until she finds Paul cheating on her. And then her giant and overprotective family jump in and they decide to use this as a chance to show Jasmine exactly what she deserves because everyone hated Paul. And that was one of the things that I loved the most about this book was the giant overprotective family. Their conspiring is shown through series of text messages throughout the book, and this Jasmine project that her family is working on behind her back is supposed to come to fruition at her graduation party, where all of the most eligible teen bachelors in Orlando are going to be there to try and win Jasmine over in light of her breakup with Paul. But then maybe Paul wants her back, and some of these bachelors are going rogue. So it was just very funny. I really liked the way that the family dynamic was told in this story, and the descriptions of food in this book literally had my mouth watering. They were so well done and so descriptive. So I would say my two biggest takeaways from this were the family dynamics and the cuisine. If you are specifically interested in reading books about K-pop boy groups and K-pop romance, then I have the two perfect recommendations for you, and that is Once Upon a K-Prom by Kat Cho and XOXO by Axie Oh. First, we will start with talking about Once Upon a K-Prom by Kat Cho, and this one was so cute. I think it would have been a perfect 5-star read for me if I had found it when I was still in high school. Sadly, I think that I found it a little bit too late in life, but it was very cute and it was very enjoyable. This book follows the story of Elena Sue and Robbie Choi, who were best friends when they were kids until Robbie moves away to Seoul for his dad's job. But before he moves away, he promises that he will come back to take Elena to prom. Only after moving back to Seoul, Robbie goes on to become a K-pop idol in one of the most popular boy groups. However, he does keep his promise to Elena, so if you were in her shoes, what would you do if the world's biggest K-pop star asked you to prom? I did really enjoy the inclusions of the K profiles throughout. There were references in here to members from ATEEZ and Stray Kids, so that was super fun when reading to come across those. I also really loved the theme of activism featured in this story. Elena is super passionate about saving her local community center, and she and her best friend Josie are both very passionate about their activism, and I really appreciated that that stayed consistent throughout the story, and I just loved this. I really like how much we got to see of the other members of WDB, which is the K-pop boy group in this book, and I'm very excited because the sequel to this book comes out in March of next year, and it focuses on a different member of WDB. So we'll get to read Moonster's story next year, and the sequel will be called Wish Upon a K-Star. So I'm excited for that one. I just think that these are very fun reads. And then coming back to Axie's book, we have XOXO, and the sequel to XOXO is called ASAP. I have this one on my Kobo. I have not gotten a chance to read ASAP yet, but I'm very excited to read it sometime in the near future. XOXO follows the story of our main character, Jenny, who is a classically trained award-winning cellist, and she never chooses fun over practicing her cello until the night that she meets Jae-woo. They wind up spending a night together wandering around Los Angeles before Jae-woo's flight back to South Korea, and Jenny thinks that she will never see him again. It was just a boy that she had a fun adventure with one night, and then he's going to be an ocean away again. Until Jenny's mom lets her know that they have to move to Seoul to take care of her ailing grandmother, and Jenny also winds up getting accepted to her dream performing arts school. And wouldn't you know it, Jae-woo winds up attending the same performing arts school that Jenny does. Only once she starts attending the school and she moves into her dorm, she realizes that he is actually the member of one of the world's biggest K-pop boy groups. As a result, he is expressly forbidden from dating. I really enjoyed this one. I think that the forbidden romance element was so fun. I also really liked the international boarding school setting. That was something that was new for me. I also really related to Jenny's character. Her need to have a plan for the future is something that I relate to extremely well, so I really liked reading about her character. This book also had complex family dynamics kind of as a subplot, and that's a theme that I have seen in many of these books that I've read, are the topics of complex family dynamics, and I always find them very interesting to read about. I also have a complex family dynamic, so I just really loved the setting for this book. I really loved the relationship between Jenny and her grandmother. I think in general this book did a really good job of kind of showcasing the relationship between young people and elders and kind of that culture of respect that South Korea has. So I really enjoyed this one, and I'm very excited to read ASAP, which ASAP is about Jenny's roommate and another member of Jae-woo's boy group, so I'm very excited to read their story. I think that one is like second chance romance. And last but most certainly not least, we have Rules for Rule Breaking by Talia Tucker. I read this one earlier this year and I absolutely loved it. Like, genuinely became one of my top YA rom-coms ever, of all time. This story follows Winter Park and Bobby Bae, who have been rivals for as long as they've known each other. They are the only two Korean Americans living in their North Carolina town, and as a result, their parents are very close, so they constantly force Winter and Bobby together over the course of their lives, and over time, that has just helped create the perfect competitive storm. So this is like a road trip romance because Winter and Bobby find themselves on a college road trip together. They both have their own reasons for accepting a trip together. Their parents highly encourage it. Neither of them originally wanted to go together, and then they embark on this epic college road trip from North Carolina, traveling up the East Coast, and they are intent on breaking all of the rules that they have set for themselves and each other. And this was another one that was laugh out loud hilarious. Really great writing, really great pacing. I loved reading Winter and Bobby's characters. Winter is my space-loving, cozy sweater, I want her to be my best friend kind of character. And I actually saw a lot of myself in Bobby's character. He is very type A, very risk-averse, very kind of like an anxious overachiever, so I related to poor Bobby a lot. The side characters, Kai and Emmy, were also really well done. I have been pleasantly surprised in a lot of, actually pretty much most of these books that I featured today, how well the side characters are written. I love a fully developed side character, so I really liked the friendships and the differences between the two friendships in this book. I think that Winter and Emmy's friendship and Kai and Bobby's friendships, they were so different, but they were so fun to read about, so really loved that. Once again, this one also had really great, really well-developed family dynamics built in. I think that the differences between Winter and Bobby's parents and the way that they raised Winter and Bobby were written so well. You know, I think that the relationship that Winter has with her grandmother was also something that I loved reading about. Winter's grandmother was another one of my favorite characters. And I also really loved reading about the concept of language learning in this book. It was something that Bobby was very insecure about, is that Winter knows a decent amount of Korean from spending time with her grandmother, and Bobby's parents didn't raise him to speak any Korean, and that's a big insecurity of his, is that he's Korean American and he doesn't know any Korean. So I think that that difference between Winter and Bobby was something that was written really well, but I think it was also very emotional to read that, as Bobby kind of grappled with what that meant for him. So I liked that language learning component that was included in the story. I just loved this. It was hilarious, it was emotional, it was raw. It was just so fun and so feel good, and Winter and Bobby own my heart forever. Okay, and to finish, we will spotlight the books that I have on my shelf currently that I am looking forward to reading soon. I have a ton of others on my to-be-read list that I don't currently have in my possession. I think I'll have a separate video where I kind of just go over my whole TBR because it is quite long, and I'm sure this video is also getting quite long. So, first up we have by Sophie Kim. This is The God and the Gumiho. I am so excited to read this. This one is very, very high up on my list. I will probably be reading this one very soon. So in the next time I make a book video, hopefully I will have read all of these, and then I can tell you more about other ones that I want to read, because I am never satisfied. I will be reading books until I die. Next up we have The Colliding Worlds of Mina Lee by elloecho. And I think this one would be I don't think it's YA contemporary. Maybe this one also straddles the line of fantasy, romance, contemporary. I'm not sure exactly where this one would officially fall. I think that this is a really cool concept, and it's one that I am really excited to read. So hoping to make time for this one soon. Next we have Fireworks by Alice Lynn. And this one I think is YA romance, but this is also another K-pop romance book. And I think I just get very sweet, very fluffy vibes from this one. So I think this one might be a little bit lower on my priority list, maybe when I'm like just needing some good fluff, but still excited to read it someday. Kat Cho, who wrote Once Upon a K-Prom, has also written a fantasy duology. So this is Wicked Fox, and I do have the sequel on my Kobo called Vicious Spirits. Very excited. I'm very excited for all of these. I guess that's a given. And then last up that I have on my shelf waiting to be read is A Crane Among Wolves by June Her. And this one is like historical fiction, fantasy. I'm excited for this one because historical fiction is not something that I read enough of. So I am really excited about the historical component of this one. And I also have several others by June Her that I want to read, so stay tuned. Okay, wow, that was way more talking than I really thought that I was going to do, but I simply love books so much, and I just have a lot to say about them at any given moment in time. Thank you for sticking with me to the end of this video if you have made it this far. If you enjoyed this video and you maybe found some new recommendations that you want to try out reading for yourself, let me know in the comments. Let me know if any of these are books you have read, or if they are books that you're excited to read after learning about them. Or just tell me honestly, what is your favorite book? Tell me, you can, look, just fill the comments with anything about books and I'll be excited to read every single one of them. So please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And I think that is all for today. Bye friends, thank you for watching. 시청해 주셔서 감사합니다. 안녕 친구들. Is it blooper time? I think it's probably blooper time. Enjoy. Hey friends, what's up? So yeah. Oh, I have a bug bite that I scratched too hard and I made it bleed and it made a scab, and I just like pressed into it with my hand. That hurt. But We'll just do a quick one-line sentence today. A sentence is one line, rah-rah. What am I? I wonder if I'll put that in the blooper reel. I know I did not just hear thunder. Are we really gonna have two back-to-back videos with thunder? I actually love the rain, so I welcome the thunder, but no, I don't think I like that. Okay, I am dropping them. Oh my god. Okay, I can do this. I'm strong. I'm strong. That was lightning. And now comes the thunder. Say hello. What a cutie. Translated work? Did you just come to hang? You scared of the thunder? Thanks, that was sweet. Crushed it.